I just wanted to say, first of all, that I respect the struggle in Nigeria, especially against the oil companies. I spent 6 years working for Arabian American Oil Company when I was very young, right out of high school, and it's the dirtiest business I've ever seen in my life. And unfortunately, 40 years later, it hasn't changed at all. The reason I'm here also is because of communication and cell phones, and I may be the only person you'll ever meet in New York who does not have a cell phone, and deliberately so. I have a moral dilemma in the treatment of women in the Congo. The precious metals that are used to make the cell phone are generated by slave labor, and the money generated by the sale of that metal is used to pay soldiers, arms, weapons, and continue a war that's been going on for 10 years. Excuse me. My question is, where do you see the cell phone and communication in the struggles that you're trying to solve, whereas at the same time you know that the source of that cell phone and the development of it is caused by great suffering? I've seen, wildfire cell phone use through North Africa and the Arab world. Now that's the weapon of choice in revolution. Can something good come from something bad? And I do have a suggestion, if I may, on what my solution is, and that is that nothing terrifies cell phone and mega corporations more than to know that you're going to stick with what you have. You're not going to buy the next toy 3 months from now. You're not going to buy the next app. Just let them know in a handwritten letter, I have a cell phone, I don't like what's going on, but I will stick with this. I will not buy your next evolution, your next phase, your next app, and that's it. That will terrify them. And maybe that will start to filter back to you and your struggle. And that's all I've got to say.
Well, it's actually touching because most times we don't consider the fact that some of the technology is also actually coming from the multinationals that are exploiting the people. Actually, when cell phones was introduced in Nigeria, it was an elitist thing. A lot of people at the community level did not have access to it. And after a long while, after 2 years, 3 years, people were able to start getting the very cheap cell phones. And then the tariff was also very high, so it was difficult to meet up. People were only like sending text messages or making calls, and they could not do any other thing with it. But every day it comes more sophisticated and all that. So these days people can take photos, people can, Sowore was actually talking about the BlackBerry, that now a lot of people have the BlackBerries. But then a lot of people are also know, like back home in Nigeria, we know that the MTN network is actually exploiting a lot of people, and then you are not getting efficient services because most times you cannot receive a call, you cannot make a call, you cannot use the internet facility that they offer. But people have not really taken action against the big communication companies. So I think I would take your advice of writing to them, well, we are stuck with this, but we won't buy another one. And we are also going to think of how to also protest the exploitation by the communication industry.
Each time I hear the kind of proposal you have, one, it makes me feel ashamed because I have 2 cell phones. I think but mine is a weapon, and I'm not afraid to say that. One of the things that I have done over the years is not to buy gas from Shell, but let me tell you, there's also a symbolism to that. Symbolism in the sense that I've never found any oil company in the world that is good. It doesn't matter whether it's Shell, Chevron, but symbolically, I'm fine not to buy from Shell because I know they killed Ken Saro-Wiwa in a contract killing with the Nigerian military. Sometimes we also don't like to drive cars, because they burn our gas and our blood, in the streets of America. But sometimes also I feel like driving cars that just burn my, my own entitlement of the gas that they take out of Nigeria. So I'm always in a dilemma. But the most important thing for me is that you can buy food from host food, if you are not poor, and be healthy, right? But if you don't have an alternative, you have no option than to buy sometimes even expired milk, because that's the neighborhood that you have been consigned in this, you know, human ladder. So those of you that feel strongly that way, I support it. You know, you don't use cell phones, don't use their new apps. But those of us who feel like cell phone can become a weapon to fight back and fight the revolution like they're doing in North Africa now, you know, let's also support that. It may not make sense now, but for people in Nigeria who need cell phone for their own daily existence, you know, that's the only means of livelihood and the only weapon they have. And they are looking at it all the time and saying, look, I'm going to use this cell phone as a status symbol. And then now the movement has gotten to a point where they're looking at the cell phone and their camera as a weapon. You know, now I get, you know, voice recordings using sophisticated cell phones of conversation between politicians on how they want to rig elections. If those guys at home didn't have it, we won't have access to those kind of confidential information. You know, we get photographs of big-time politicians buying, you know, and bribing people on the street. Before, people didn't think that the cameras in the cell phone could be used as a weapon to fight against bribery and corruption on the street. So that is why we like the technology. Any edge that I can get, any apps I can get to fight back, I will. And any apps that you don't need as well, don't get it, because I know that if you look at the number of apps here in this country, you can understand that cell phone is also a weapon for mass ignorance. You know, because it puts you in a lockdown. You know, I mean, that's what I saw when I went to Columbia University. You got a cell phone, a cup of coffee, you know, and the iPod when it came. You are in virtual imprisonment. You know, I mean, how can you hear, see with all those three things in your hand? It's impossible. You know, but that's America for you. But somebody in a village in Egypt feels differently in that regard. So how do we connect, see, and analyze this to take us to the next level is my concern, you know. And that does not mean that, you know, you are a bad person, you know. But that does not also mean that we should not fight against the companies that are taking the minerals out of the soil in the Congo, you know, using cell phones to also expose them, and or the big communication companies who are also very happy to shut down internet and cell phone whenever the revolution is in progress. You know, of course, we have to fight all of these people together. I hope I made sense.
I don't think we can be reminded enough of the environmental destruction and the human destruction that's involved with any form of hardware, of creation. I mean, we don't hear about it nearly as often as I think the issue justifies. Yes. I do think there are creative ways that we can get through this impasse. Particularly, less so with cell phones now, although that will change, but particularly with laptops and desktop computers, the single greatest thing you can do to extend the life of your hardware and to fight the upgrade battle that corporate America is trying to put you through is to install free and open source software on your computer. Part of the way you get tricked and forced into upgrading your hardware is because you no longer can use a particular piece of software with the hardware. It's like, oh, I can't download this piece of software, doesn't work with this hardware, therefore I have to get a new hardware and then I have to get a new software. And it's like this recurring thing. Free and open source software tends to be much better and easier to run on older hardware, and it will extend the life of your computer for years and years and years. And I think that we as a movement need to not demand that just for the practical reasons, but also demand it because we should be running free and open source software in all the devices we use so that we can control when we want to upgrade and how we want to upgrade those things.
Suman, can you just elaborate on what that is and where you get it?
Yep. Thank you. Free and open source software is in contrast to proprietary software. Software that's proprietary means that it is restricted, has intellectual property restrictions. The people who write Microsoft Windows or OS X operating system or Final Cut Pro or Microsoft Word, these people wrote it and they have a license and own the copyright on it, such that you are not allowed to copy it. You are not allowed to do anything with it that they haven't already given you permission to do. You can't access the source code. You can't make any modifications, changes, or improvements. The free and open source software movement, in contrast, is about writing software that then is given to the world for free to be improved upon. Basically, the difference is, do you want to write software because you need it to serve a particular functionality, or are you writing software because you have a business model and you want to make a profit from selling it? So there's Linux is an operating system comparable to Microsoft Windows or Mac OS X, and there's a whole suite of programs that will run on a Linux operating system that are also completely free and open. And if we spend our time learning these tools, then we're contributing to a free and open community of users of this software, as opposed to contributing to a community that profits corporations like Microsoft or Adobe or Apple Computer.
Jamie, are there parallel movements in terms of cell phone technology?
Yes. It's more complicated. The Android operating system is an operating system that Google is working on, that is based on free and open source software, but has lots of proprietary pieces to it. So that's a good start, but there's a lot more work that we need to do in order to create a completely free and open source cell phone operating system.
And I wanted to suggest to, for those who might want cell phone, there's a cell phone company out of California, I think, called Credo. I don't know. Credo. Yes, I don't know if you can use it in New York, but I've gotten to hear about it a lot. I mean, I don't carry it, but if you're using them, you're contributing to the movement because they support a variety of movements in the U.S.